Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Monday, May 24th, 2021, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
Hello.
How you doing today, Trev?
I'm doing all right. It's been a slow yet busy day.
Been a bit of a case of the Mondays out here.
Yeah.
But Trevor this week brought forward this week's topic. Trev, what is happening over there at Ubisoft?
So about a week ago, GamesIndustry.biz wrote up a report basically referencing a French publication, Le Telegram, or I don't know, it's got a couple extra accents, but it basically boils down to The Telegram. That has been kind of keeping an eye on Ubisoft over the last year. In particular, they're looking at kind of some court cases and legal proceedings that are due to start here in the next month or so, as part of a collective action from Solidaires Informatiques Jeux Vidéo. I never took French, so
Nailed
it's
it.
probably super wrong.
Sounded good.
But it's basically like a video game union, video game workers union, that has been kind of, working against Ubisoft following the big flurry of harassment claims that came up last year. And essentially the article that GamesIndustry.biz kind of wrote about last week very much kind of boils down to they've made changes, but according to kind of people within Ubisoft in Ubisoft Canada and as well as other regions of the company, very little has seemingly changed in terms of the corporate culture. In particular, there's basically a paragraph that says, in Canada, quote, nothing has changed, end quote, since the appointment of Christophe Duren, parentheses, who happens to be Yves Guillemot's cousin, in July 2020, a source told Le Telegram. What's more, new harassment cases have been reported since, but those who reported the issues were sidelined in December 2020. So, a case or an example there of not only like nothing being done, but hey, more nepotism being introduced into the equation. Other items referenced are that some of the people who were kind of at the heart of a lot of the harassment accusations last year are still in their Ubisoft jobs, either or such as Florent Castelnerac, who heads Ubisoft-owned Nadeo, and who was accused of harassment by a dozen employees. And a union representative said management is, quote, protecting him. Or Ubisoft Singapore director Hugh Grecoeur, who stepped down in November but is still, according to his LinkedIn profile, at Ubisoft, just in a different role. So there's been that's basically kind of the sentiment of this piece that came out last week, with Ubisoft, basically a Ubisoft representative responding to a request for comment saying, over a period of several months, Ubisoft has implemented major changes across its organization, internal processes, and procedures in order to guarantee a safe, inclusive, and respectful working environment for all team members, listing a number of the new staff members that are coming in, as well as external investigations or anonymous reporting tools. But the gist still seems to be that it hasn't been enough, and obviously we've seen from the public-facing sides of Ubisoft that they refuse to ever acknowledge the issues in front of any of their Ubisoft forwards last year, always kind of saying like a garbage, oh, well, this stuff was pre-recorded, so we can't put it in front of this video, so we're going to do it as a separate standalone thing. And then I basically brought it up this morning because Ubisoft is doing basically like a PR rush today where they put out their own blog post saying, here's what we've done, repeating a lot of the same kind of PR statement stuff, and getting a whole bunch of companies that hadn't necessarily picked up on the GamesIndustry.biz or the Le Telegram story last week to pick up the Ubisoft blog post and basically say, hey, yeah, it's a year later and Ubisoft is doing better. But that's just like the latest case of, I would say, the industry at large serving as an extension of PR, and it kind of makes me sick. So I'm just like, I look at this and I said basically before we started recording, it has held true for the entirety of this last year that if Yves Guillemot wasn't covering up the abuse and harassment allegations that came to light last year, he was incompetent in his role as CEO, and in either situation, he should not be CEO of Ubisoft anymore, but clearly still is. So what the fuck does it matter is basically where I sit on this Monday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many of these kind of stories, right, on whether it's input or non-news you care about, of workplace harassment allegations, and just toxic, I think, cultures in workplaces. And it's always, I think, interesting to see the companies that enact some sort of change and that where there are repercussions to those consequences and ones where there aren't, right? And we each know a lot of people who work at Ubisoft, right? And it is, I think, a tough balancing act where you want to root for the people to make that change, right? And to enact reforms and real shakeups in their organizations, but understand also the entrenched forces kind of working against that.
Yeah.
Especially a company the size of Ubisoft, where they're just such a massive global thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, the people we know at Ubisoft are not in positions of like significant power. Like, I'm sure they're doing what they can in their teams, within their teams, but yeah, they're not like the heads of entire, branches of Ubisoft.
It's made hard by the fact that Yves Guillemot is Ubisoft in so many ways, right? Like, he's just personified that company for, I mean, a decade plus, longer than that, right? And so I don't know whether or not he hid the abuse, whether he was unaware of it and, like I said, just kind of incompetent, or anything kind of in between those two. But I think it is becoming abundantly clear to me that he just doesn't care enough, right? Either way, whether or not he knew at the time it was happening is sort of irrelevant to me right now, because he's not doing really that much to enact any sort of reform and change after the fact, once he was made aware of it, right? Like, whether or not he was guilty or not at the time of trying to hide stuff, he's, in my eyes, guilty of not doing anything to really change, right? Like, I think it was Ubisoft Canada where he said nothing has changed, right?
Yeah,
and
nothing has changed, and his son, his cousin is installed in the position of HR now there,
right?
Which and his son leads another studio. Like, there are definite issues. Like, I'm sitting here, like, longingly looking back on the days where it looked like Vivendi might, like, do a hostile takeover of Ubisoft, and just wondering what that world would look like at this point. Like, I'm sure a whole bunch of this stuff was, long running, entrenched in their company culture, and, a switch to Vivendi wouldn't have solved that, but it might have put new eyes on a whole bunch of stuff, as opposed to, what Yves has kind of been doing or not doing. I mean, like, the game industry article kind of highlights, like, a couple, new staff people at Ubisoft are, like, Anika Grant being named the chief people officer, which is basically like, a CEO level or a chief level of HR. I believe it mentioned she had come from Uber, which is exactly, a company I think of when I think of taking care of their people.
That's a great point.
So I don't know.
Known for, in fact.
Exactly. I don't know. I don't know how impactful the changes that they're touting are really going to be.
I think the thing for me is that every company has, or hopefully every company has at least, the things like, this is what we're doing for our people, right? For our workers and for our employees. Those programs have as much force as the people in charge give them, right? And so it's easy to have a blog post or, the, like, PDF file that's into every new employee of, like, here's what the company's doing for you kind of thing. But if no one's actually kind of doing those things for you, they're just kind of written down, then it's sort of meaningless, right? And so I think that the chief people officer at Ubisoft is going to be exactly as powerful as they let her be, right? And exactly as kind of, I think, caring to the needs of the workforce of Ubisoft as they allow her to be, right? Or as they allow anyone in those kind of positions to be, right? And if they largely think that just hiring her is going to be enough, then I think that's kind of just going to be a symbolic move and it's not really going to do anything. And I think, I don't know when she was, hired and put in place, but certainly if it was more than 5 months ago, 6 months ago, it doesn't seem like they're giving her that much actual power to kind of enact changes across the entire company, right? And I recognize that Ubisoft is a massive company again, and it takes a long time to kind of enact change, but a year is a long time. And change hasn't really occurred. And it's not like Yves Guillemot is not aware of it. Like you said, he's got half his family working at the company for him in positions of leadership too. He would understand what is going on pretty much anywhere in the company at this point, even more so in the fact that like people are asking, writing stories about, hey, what has changed in the last year? So I find it really dispiriting and discouraging to kind of see where they're at a year removed from it and see where they're going. Right, because I don't want this to be a Quantic Dream David Cage situation where it's just like, oh, they're artists being artists and you have to just put up with it kind of thing. That didn't slide in like 2018 when we had those stories, in 2017, but it doesn't work even more so in 2021 and where we're at.
Yeah, and I would part of the underlying issue here that doesn't seem to be getting addressed is like HR is always in support of the company. Like an HR department is never really like, hey, we're here for the employees. Like that position, that department within a company is pretty much always exists to protect the company from potential like lawsuits and stuff
Legal
by
issues,
their employees. Never the other way around. Like they're not protecting the employees; they're protecting the company. And they're doing pretty much, they will do everything, within their rights and powers to protect the company over the employee almost any time. I do want to, in this conversation, and you touched on, we have, seen a lot of similar stories in this. I do want to circle back to a story from earlier this year where we did see, I think, some meaningful change with regard to the developer behind Season, the game that wowed, in particular, a lot of our team over at that nerdy site at PAX East last year. They had kind of come under fire where one of their basically head honchos had a lot of abuse allegations, and the company basically came out and said they've been suspended indefinitely, within a week kind of thing. And so, like there were a lot of issues and some of them, are still probably in effect because that one was specifically tied to the like CEO, Amélie Lamarche, and then like her co-founder, Simon Darvaux, where Darvaux was like accused of the abuse allegations, and there was concern that because they were partners, at least at some point in time, and co-founders, that Lamarche was protecting him in his role, but they did try and make some things right, at least in that he was basically put on indefinitely suspended, and an external auditing firm was going to come in and kind of do an assessment of best practices and culture and stuff. And so like those are the kinds of things that we haven't seen really from Ubisoft. Like if one of the things that Ubisoft came out with was like we had we brought in this giant respected firm to come out and reevaluate the things we do and the ways we handle abuse and like allegations and complaints and stuff like that, then I'd give them a little bit of credit, but like the actions have to speak louder than the words, and right now all they have are words, and those words have largely rung hollow for the last year, so like even the words aren't great.
No, I mean, I agree, right? And I think it always feels like we're in this constant back and forth like tidal wave of feeling good about we're making some sort of forward progress on this or on just toxic cultures in general than games, whether it's crunch or anything else. And then the next day comes and it's like, all right, we're actually haven't made any sort of progress on this issue. I think the way everything kind of shaked out with the team behind Seasons, and I think the feeling of progress there makes me think that, like so much in the industry, a lot of the change and a lot of the progress on this issue is going to be made by smaller indie teams who, by their very nature, are just more nimble, more flexible, and usually more progressive than the giant companies and giant kind of organizations that, you know, dot the gaming landscape as well, right? Like, I don't ever expect Ubisoft to be at the vanguard of gaming workplace culture, whereas a smaller team can help push that and can help make that more the norm on their end of things. But
I mean,
I don't know. I mean,
that's great in theory, but like there are 20,000 people or whatever like employed by Ubisoft. So
yeah,
Ubisoft doing something like that and actually like, taking point and taking lead would impact a far larger part of the development community,
no,
I imagine, than
unquestionably.
leaving it to small, mom and pop 10-person teams around. Like
Unquestionably, right?
2,000 indie companies have to make notable change to line up against one Ubisoft or something.
No, I mean, unquestionably, right? And I think that that's true. I just don't know if that's going to be how change is going to come in the industry. It's going to be more, I think, studios over time kind of making this more the norm, so that when they go to a bigger company, they bring that with them, right? And I think even bigger companies, there is a wide disparity between how I think Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Ubisoft, Bethesda, who's I guess going to be part of Microsoft soon, all handle these issues and all handle their own problems, right? And Quantic Dream, obviously, with David Cage. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I expect from the long-term future for Ubisoft to look like, right? Like, I think part of me kind of feels like change won't necessarily come until either Yves Guillemot lets it or until he leaves, right? Like, that's the thing, because like I don't want to be so, I think, blunt as to say he doesn't care. I think he, some level of him cares. I just don't think that it is any sort of priority for him, right? Like, I just think that there's so many other things he cares about. And it's like, if we can get to that too, great. If not, it's okay. There are more important things here, right? And so I think if that's the leadership of, the company, there's kind of a ceiling on how much change I think can occur until he's gone, until you get new leadership. But otherwise, I have two stories I'm going to shout out. So, Trevor, do you have any final thoughts on this topic?
No, I mean, apart from like, I just sometimes I just like wake up and I just get angry at this industry.
Yeah, that's fair. So shift into the two shout out topic story things I've got. Let me open them up. The first one is the first one is a simple one, which is just from Luke Plunkett over at Kotaku. Twitch adds over 350 new tags like Black, Transgendered, and Disabled. I saw this floating around yesterday evening, I think it was. Maybe this morning, depending on when I woke up and actually saw it. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously Twitch is kind of a mess. That's part of its charm, and also part of its, fatal flaw. But I think anything that can be used to kind of help, I think, accessibility and identifiers, and I think bringing more attention to the diversity within gaming, I generally am here for. The 350 new tags relate to gender, sexual orientation, race, nationality, ability, mental health, and more. And and Twitch kind of had a statement where they said that it simply gives creators more choices, which will allow users to better focus and promote the stuff they're into. It also includes transgender, black, disabled, veteran, and VTuber. And so I think, Twitch has gotten a lot of flack, rightfully so, for doing a lot of dumb shit, most of what Twitch does, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And what isn't it describes as like explicit content and adult content and that kind of stuff. But I think this, where they made an effort to reach out to, numerous third-party organizations, whether it was like GLAAD or the Trevor Project, Able Gamers, Special Effect, and then others within the, diversity of communities out there, I actually find really encouraging and exciting. And so I thought the story was really cool. I thought it was really good on Twitch to kind of help fix what has been something that could very easily be worked on and couldn't be made better on their platform. I think it'd be cool for more things incorporate this as well. Mixer is dead, I guess, so not Mixer. That was the first one I kind of thought of. But other platforms, they kind of always include, and better reflect who is actually playing their games or using their platforms and services. So that was the first shout out I wanted to give a shout out to. And then the second shout out, also from Kotaku. And that one, where is that one at? Kotaku's website, not a fan. It's a very ugly UI while I look for it. Polygon's UI, great. Love how their site looks. The second one is No Need to Wait. Fans made their own version of Overwatch 2 by Parrish. I just think it's a really fun, to me, it's like a great, it's just a weird, fun, I think, take on gamers being weird, right? And I always love these kind of slice of gaming fandom things that Kotaku would do every now and again. Polygon does every now and again too. And yeah, I mean, who needs to wait for video games when people can just make their own versions of them? It kind of details one fan journey through Overwatch's workshop mode and creating the custom games that will evolve there and everything involved in that. And so, yeah, they made Overwatch 2, their version of it. I think it's really fun. I think it's really a good read. It's not super long, so you can kind of get through it and kind of be interested in it by yourself. The last thing I'm going to shout out, this isn't really a full shout out, but because it's a series of pieces, is Polygon every now and again does I don't know what they call them, but they're basically oral essays and oral pieces and features around a single topic from media, whether it's, they had one on Pirates of the Caribbean last year that I think I shouted out. They had one on the Dark Knight's 10th anniversary. They're doing one right now for the 20th anniversary of Shrek. I love it. It's one of my favorite recurring things that Polygon does. I love to get these kind of visual histories of gaming franchises or movies or TV shows or that kind of thing. Entertainment Weekly had one years ago for the 20th anniversary, I think, of The West Wing. I'm always a sucker for them. I love that kind of stuff, the history of and behind the scenes stuff of it. And so, Polygon right now is doing a 20th anniversary reflection on Shrek. And this is also my way to shout out the fact that I think it was from The Guardian. If it's not, my apologies. It might be from the Telegraph or Times in the UK, but it was a UK website that had the happy 20th anniversary Shrek. It's a terrible trash garbage can movie. It's awful, right? And they had this whole thing about how Shrek is terrible, and it's all right, what a weird take to have on the 20th anniversary movie. Just let people be happy. Shrek is good.
Shrek at 20, an unfunny and overrated low for blockbuster animation. The Guardian, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, if you, as someone who loves The Guardian, their opinion section can be wild sometimes. It's a little hot over there, but it was fun to read in terms of just this is such a bad take, and an essay one. But Polygon's thing is fun, so you can go check that out if you want all the kinds of Shrek content. Trev, do you have any shout-outs?
Nope. I got nothing.
Let's wrap her up, boys, then. Thank you for listening to That News You Care About. I appreciate it. If you like what you heard, you can go over to patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Like all of our wonderful patrons have. Their support helps make this show and that D Plus show and all the shows happen and keep the lights on over here at That Nerdy Site. Again, that is patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Go check out all the tiers and goals and gadgets over there. You can also go help us and support us by going over to youtube.com/thatnerdysite. We are racking up the subscribers on our goal to whatever our new milestone is. And you can also go over to podcast services around the globe and like, subscribe, share with your friends and family, rate and review us on iTunes, give us 5 stars, tell us why you love us and our docile tones. Otherwise, you can go find Trevor Starkey at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything you want to plug?
A pre-plug for, we announced on that D Plus show this last week that we're going to be doing a Summer of Star Wars on that Disney Plus, that D Plus show.
Absolutely.
Starting the June 4th, because of course the famous Star Wars saying "June the 4th be with you." We're going to be starting with episode 4, watching the Skywalker saga chronologically each week on that D Plus show, and then we're going to throw in the other movies, definitely Rogue One and Solo. Probably the Clone Wars, just because Logan doesn't want to do it.
Feeling sick that week, yeah.
Yeah. And fingers crossed. I was talking to Frank. Hopefully we'll get him on for that as well. So we'll have like a nice return.
I would love that.
Of Frank onto the content. So right now the plan is basically for me, Logan, Cam to do that, and hopefully Frank. So check that out on that D Plus show, our Summer of Star Wars.
Yeah, it could be fun to have Jazz make an appearance or two on that as well, because I don't know what her Star Wars history looks like either. Yes, you can go find me at LeftyLogie or LeftyLogie on the internet, LOGGY. I will second that shout out as someone who watched around, or at least over half of these movies last year, including the original trilogy, all over the course of a weekend. I'm very, very excited. These movies are really good and also not so good. And that's kind of the fun of Star Wars. I think
like
as
late June and early July is going to be a rough few weeks for us, I think.
Yeah, episode 3 I think is so good. That's like where we didn't finish episode 3 last year. But so you had to get to some bad to get some good. But as someone who I think is a fan of James Bond and Star Wars, people just need to be okay with like there being bad in the good of the series that you love. The MCU has spoiled people for bad movies. And so I'm excited for it. I'm excited to watch it. And I'm excited to experience almost more than anything else I'm excited most of all to watch the original trilogy again, but I'm also excited to watch like Solo and Rogue One again. Because I haven't seen either one since they came out in theaters, I believe. And so to kind of re-gauge my opinion on those two, one of which I like, one of which I think is not that great. And then to kind of walk through the sequel trilogy, which I think is probably the weakest trilogy, or certainly the most wildly inconsistent. So that'll be its own fun journey as well. In addition to that, you can also go check out the full Let's Play series now of myself and Trevor's journey through It Takes Two. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that Let's Play series. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Go check that out. Me and Trevor had a blast playing through that game. And then you can also, I believe, start to go watch our journey through Overcooked as well, which is going to start going live this week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So you go check that out as well. And Trevor was a madman and did Cuphead in like back-to-back days for your amusement. And those are both live as well on the YouTube channel, so go check that out. Otherwise, you can go find That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site. One little update that Trevor tweeted out that you can go find is there has been no update that I know of in terms of the IGN story from last week. There actually wasn't any more breaking news for once on us. It was pretty incredible. So hopefully, like Trevor tweeted out, they did have that sit-down meeting with kind of management.
I mean, they very clearly did not get what they asked for in that letter, because they asked for like, you know, whoever made the decision to delete the tweet, like come forward and put a public face to it, and let's put the tweet back up. So like I tweeted out today basically like, hey, anything come of that? Because it doesn't look like anything came of that, and like. It kind of weakens any kind of like position if all of those IGN people got together and nothing happens. Like, what does that mean? You know, did the company call their bluff, or in 2 weeks' time are they going to basically be like, hey, have a fun E3, everybody, cough cough, we're sick.
Yeah,
who knows what's going on over there.
Yeah, so obviously best of luck to those, but otherwise, for all of us here at That Nerdy Site, thank you for listening. Play your games, class dismissed, and be good to each other.